one of the things that atheists will use to argue against the Christian God of the Bible, this is extremely important because I hardly heard Christians arguing against atheism with this particular argument. This is a very interesting argument a lot of atheists use, but I haven't heard a lot of Christian apologists, even famous ones, defending this. If there are, then I'd be very interested. But the famous Christian apologists, they don't address this. So let's talk about this one. Now, there are famous atheists who argue against Christians. And one of their favorite arguments, which Christians have a hard time debunking, is this, is that they try to find things in the Old Testament, obviously not New Testament, but Old Testament, to try to find some things of what God did back then, which is cruel and inhumane. So let's list out several examples. One example is slavery. There's a passage in the Bible that friends and possibly family members, they can sell one of their loved ones as a slave so that they don't go into debt. Whoa, that's pretty bad. Another one is stoning. Well, that's pretty obvious, right? It's insane. If you look at YouTube, this stoning thing that's still occurring in Muslim countries, it's nuts. But guess what? Christians are no better because you had that in the Bible. Another thing is genocide. I mean, you heard the commands God gave to Joshua and some of the soldiers? It sounds nuts. Kill everybody, man, woman, child, even infant, and even an animal. Okay, that's pretty nuts, right? That's why a lot of people, they go against the Bible because of that. So slavery, stoning, genocide. Another thing that they go against the Bible is polygamy. So women were definitely mistreated. As a matter of fact, if you look at Matthew 19, the Bible shows that if a woman offended a man, so this is really male chauvinism, you can point out. A man had a bunch of wives, but if one of the wives offended him, even the least, he has the right to divorce, actually. That's in the Old Testament. So now I could list a lot more. There's a lot more you can put. So you'll notice right here, why in the world would people want to become Christians when you have all these things going on in the Bible? That's why Richard Dawkins, what he said about the God of the Bible. He described the God of the Bible as one of the most meanest bullies, one of the most evil beings throughout all of fiction and mythology, he said. Now, the answer is actually more simple than you think. You might say, I don't think so. No, it is. The easy answer. Let's look at Matthew 19. Matthew 19. We're going to look at verse 3. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? See that? In the law it was. For every cause you can divorce. Pretty unfair for some of you women who were in the Old Testament. Not only that, if he had nine more wives, right? Let's keep reading at verse 4. What did Jesus answer? This is interesting. Look at this. And he answered and said unto them, Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall twain be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. So notice right here, no divorce and no polygamy. Just one man, one woman. But look at verse 7. So then why would the Old Testament allow this kind of stuff then? They said unto him, Why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? This is the answer you want to mark down at verse 8. This is the answer against these atheists. He saith unto them, Moses, because of what? The hardness of your hearts suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not what? It was not so. You know what the simple answer to this is? It's not blaming God of the Bible. It's not the God of the Bible that you're blaming. It's who? Man. Man is the problem. But why did God allow all these things in the Bible? You know why? Here's a very simple answer. Why do atheists only pick on the Jews during that time period? Weren't there so many nations practicing this kind of stuff? See, they're just picking and choosing. You got to realize this. That's why we believe in dispensationalism. It's so important. If you're not a dispensational, that's why New Testament is different from Old Testament. That's why if you're going to pick out an evil God, you're not going to find it in New Testament. It has to be Old Testament. You know why? Because in the New Testament time period, it's different today, right? We don't do these things, correct? Correct. We don't do these things today. But in the Old Testament, they did. You might say, why did they do that, Pastor? Because the time period of man goes from Old Testament, New Testament, all the way. But man and culture and nations change throughout every time period. In the Old Testament, it was normal for men to do these kind of practices. Today's mankind, they would think that it is atrocious, it is inhumane, it is abnormal, but back then, that's not what man thought. As a matter of fact, hey, let me ask you a simple question. Today's practices in the New Testament, don't you think mankind back at the Old Testament would give the same accusation to people at the New Testament that that's abnormal, that's unusual, why would you do things that way? See, it's not the God of the Bible, it's man. But here's the thing about God, you got to understand. What God does is this. God, because he is such a merciful God and gracious God, you might think this is inhumane and atrocious, but actually I'm going to give you something that's very contrary and very surprising. It's actually God's mercy and grace. Now you might say, that's not so, Pastor. No, it is his mercy and grace, because the reason why is this. God told you at verse 8, because of the hardness of your heart. God did not intend it to be so, but because of the hardness of your heart, he allows whatever practices you want that you thought was normal back then, and he lets it carry on. Because let's use some common sense, people. If we put the culture and the practices of today in America, and you accuse Christians for being Eurocentric, those atheists, now you can turn the tables on them. You're racist, you're Eurocentric, you're biased. Because why? You're forcing down your Eurocentric white culture on these people back then who have a different culture and mindset than you. So now you turn the tables on them. Who are you to say this is a culture, this is a practice? When cultures and nations all differ from each other, even today, you see the differences. They're still different. But you don't hear them whining about those countries. All you're going to hear them whine about is the God of the Bible, the God of the Bible. Don't you think that that is discrimination then? That they're being prejudiced and not the God of the Bible? They're picking Christians deliberately. So the thing is this, God out of his mercy is giving, man is tolerating what mankind wants in his culture. Because if you use some common sense, if you force down this Eurocentric culture thousands of years ago, what do you think the people are going to do as a nation? They're going to flip out. They're going to flip out. It's chaos. Back then, everybody, all nations back then, if you forced down this Eurocentric culture and idea, that would have been too much for the people back then. And God knew that. So he allowed some things, what was normal for men and nations during those days, even if he didn't like it that way. You might say, no, God wanted it that way. No, that's not true. You know what God's culture, God's practice is? Up in heaven, there is no slave. Up in heaven, there is no polygamy. Up in heaven, there is no stoning. There is no genocide. There is none of that up in heaven. That's God's culture and practice. But he knows if he puts that kind of culture and practice on mankind today, do you think mankind is going to follow it? Or they're going to break down and go chaotic? They go break down and get chaotic. I mean, even under grace, in the New Testament, the laws and practices of the New Testament, people still complain and whine about that. And don't shake your heads like, oh, no. You bunch of Christian hypocrites, you whine and complain about what's sinful and what's worldly. Oh, I can't do that anymore now I'm saved. Oh, I can't do that anymore now that I'm saved. Look at that, man. See, hypocrisy. See, it's mankind. It's mankind's the problem, not God. It's not the God of the Bible. So, you know, God's been very gracious and merciful to you so far. You got to understand that. So when people give that kind of argument, the very easy answer is this. The very easy answer is that it was normal that nations did that back then. And God, he does not want that kind of society to begin with anyway. He wanted it what? Like the Garden of Eden, perfection. But because of mankind's sins and problems, and economic problems, societal problems, God had to find which one would find out where he can maintain some of the practices of the culture, that way society don't break down, and balance it in a way that would be the best for their society and economy as well. So he had to balance all that out together. So you got to realize this slavery, stoning, genocide, polygamy, and all that, a lot of that also had to do with giving what's best for their society spiritually, economically, and even health-wise. Let me give one easy example. Let me give one example, actually. I don't have time to go through all this, so let me just give one example. These things was normal back then and people's practices. So God had to maintain it. But he had to somehow also maintain this culture and give certain rules in it. That way it can benefit their society as a whole. So for this one, genocide, the most extreme example. Let's use this one for example. Since this was normal back then for other nations and all that, what can he use that one to balance it in a way that would benefit their society? Well, when they move in the land of Canaan, they were doing bestiality, sodomy, and you got to realize this, they didn't have condoms back then. They did not have health medicine solving AIDS and GRID and all those kind of diseases back then. Gonorrhea and syphilis and all that kind of stuff. So, what was it? It was genocide. So this was a normal practice, but what can he use this practice to enforce rules where he can use it for his glory as well and benefit their society? Get rid of the diseases in there. See? So you got to understand this, is that all these things are done, all these things that God gave, it's not his intention. That is not his intention. But God's mind is so brilliant that he'll use what was normal to mankind, what they've always wanted, and he'll somehow use it for his glory. That's the kind of God you got. He's such a brilliant God, he's not going to let anything not go for his glory. He'll use anything, even the most extreme thing, for his glory, you must understand.